There's some serious action going on there.
Once again, those high-precision fragments landed on the Ryazan oil refinery. There was also a strike on the power plant in Novo-Mechurynsk, one of the largest thermal power stations in Russia. See, those first 2 barrels, they flew out right away. You get it? Into the ditch? Yeah, they flew out immediately. And the rest, the leftovers, hell knows. Hello? Ukrainian sanctions in firm pride. An entire train loaded with petroleum products and gas condensate was destroyed there. Traffic still hasn't been restored. Witkoff accidentally leaked the source of a secret US-Russia plan on X. What did Trump's special envoy admit to? And will the new White House peace initiative withstand a collision with reality? Ukraine will receive long-range missiles. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made an important statement. Should we expect Taurus strikes on Putin's bunkers in the near future?
Details on all this and more right now. In the meantime, give this episode a like. Let's get started. So Volodymyr Zelenskyy has received the draft of the American peace plan and will discuss it with Trump. According to the American side, the plan could energize diplomacy. This was reported by the Office of the President of Ukraine. Zelensky's office noted that Ukraine is ready for constructive cooperation with the US and partners in the European Union for peace and its achievement. The President of Ukraine expects to discuss the available diplomatic opportunities and the key points necessary for peace with President Trump in the coming days, the President's office reported. Let me remind you that on Wednesday, several reputable publications citing their own sources reported that officials from the US and Russia had developed a plan to end the war in Ukraine. According to unofficial information, the plan was developed with the participation of, among others, the Russian dictator's envoy Kirill Dmitriev and the US President's special representative Steve Witkoff. On November 19th in Turkey, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also planned to discuss the Ukrainian version of the peace plan with Witkoff. But according to Axios, the talks did not take place because the head of the Ukrainian state arrived in Turkey with a document that had been developed jointly with European allies. The US peace plan envisions that Ukraine would renounce NATO membership and the presence of peacekeepers at least for several years. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal. In exchange, Washington expects Moscow to provide guarantees that it will not attack Ukraine or other European countries in the future. Meanwhile, The Telegraph reports that Donald Trump's peace plan envisions Russian control over Donbas in exchange for a rental fee. In other words, Kyiv would cede control of Donbas to Russia but retain ownership rights, while Russia would pay an unspecified rental fee for its de facto control. Achieving lasting peace in such a complex war requires both sides to make difficult but necessary concessions, stated US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. At the same time, in Europe, it is believed that in order to end the war in Ukraine, Ukrainians and Europeans must also participate in developing plans for its resolution. And now, let's take a closer look at what is known about the US peace plan.
The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, has approved a peace plan between Russia and Ukraine, which consists of 28 points. NBC News reported this, citing a high-ranking White House official. It is noted that this very plan was developed by senior members of the Trump administration over the past few weeks, in consultation with Russian Special Envoy Kirill Dmitriev and Ukrainian officials. In particular, Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the President's son-in-law Jared Kushner participated in drafting the document. According to the publication's source,
the plan is aimed at providing security guarantees to both sides. It includes what Ukraine wants and needs to achieve a lasting peace.
The publication writes that the document still requires discussion with Ukraine and Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated on his X page that the U.S. is developing a proposed plan that takes into account the positions of both sides. According to him, in order to achieve lasting peace, both sides must make difficult but necessary concessions. Meanwhile, details of the plan have begun to appear in a number of media outlets. According to the Wall Street Journal, the plan envisions significant territorial concessions to Russia, a renunciation of demands for the deployment of peacekeeping forces, and a rejection of NATO membership. The article notes that, according to a European official, this plan is likely to face strong resistance in Kyiv and among European governments. According to sources,
Ukraine will have to agree to forego membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for at least several years. Kyiv will not be allowed to host international peacekeeping forces on its territory. In return, according to officials, Moscow pledges not to attack Ukraine or other European countries and will enshrine this promise in law.
Politico reports that the peace plan has already raised concerns among Ukraine's allies. They believe that the United States may give in to the Kremlin's demands. According to the source, the provisions of the plan remain the subject of negotiations. European leaders are also worried about granting Russia territorial concessions, which they see as encouraging Moscow's aggression and setting a troubling precedent. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul noted,
All international partners continue to make efforts to finally bring President Putin to the negotiating table. Naturally, we support everything that contributes to this. We are focused on supporting Ukraine, and by doing so, we make it clear to Putin that there is no alternative to the negotiation process.
Meanwhile, the Telegraph reports that, according to the plan, Ukraine is supposedly to give up control over Donbass, but will retain ownership rights. According to the publication's sources, Russia will pay an undisclosed rent for control over the region. The content of the new peace plan has already been commented on by the United Kingdom. As reported by Reuters, a spokesperson for the country's foreign ministry stated that Trump's efforts are important, but Russia could end the war as soon as tomorrow by withdrawing its troops and stopping its illegal invasion.
U.S. Special Representative Steve Witkoff likely published a personal message publicly, inadvertently revealing the source of the U.S. and Russia's plan to end the war, journalist Michael Weiss reported. Under the relevant post on X by the article's author, Barak Ravid, Trump's envoy suggested that the source of information for the Axios article about the plan to end, about Ukraine relations, apparently, was someone named K. Subsequently, Witkoff deleted his message. He must have learned it from K. Witkoff wrote, apparently not realizing he was posting on X and not sending a private message. The journalist suggested that the person in question is Kirill Dmitriev, who is a special envoy of the Russian Federation. It's almost certainly about Kirill Dmitriev, who is quoted in the article, but it seems the Russian side is leaking this information for a reason. It looks like Philby doesn't know how Twitter works, but nevertheless, he's confident in his ability to end the war, he said. Tim Philby is a play on words based on the name of Kim Philby, the British intelligence officer and double agent for the Soviet Union. Witkoff himself has not yet commented on the situation. As for the Kremlin, they once again refused to confirm the authenticity of the peace plan for Ukraine, allegedly developed jointly with representatives from Russia and the US and leaked through Western media. A corresponding statement was made by the spokesperson for the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov. We have nothing new to add to what was said in Anchorage. There are no innovations in this case on our part, Peskov stated. He also noted that Russia and the US are not holding consultations on resolving the war in Ukraine, although there are contacts between the countries. Russia is slowing its advance in Pokrovsk due to Ukrainian drones and mined roads. The enemy's logistics are under attack by the Ukrainian armed forces, reports the Institute for the Study of War. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, reported that units of the Ukrainian defense forces continue to carry out missions in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration area. During his trip to the Pokrovsk direction, he held a meeting with the command staff. The invaders continue to be destroyed both when attempting to move and in identified areas of concentration. More on the situation at the front next.
The occupiers continue their unsuccessful attempts to break through Pokrovsk's defenses but are left with nothing. The situation in this sector of the front remains extremely tense. As reported by the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, on his Facebook page, units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to carry out missions in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration area. According to him, during his trip to the Pokrovsk direction, he held a meeting with the command staff of military administration bodies, military units and subdivisions. As Syrsky notes,
the enemy remains highly active, and the clear coordination and cohesion of our units help to counter this. We clarified the results of defensive, search and strike and assault operations aimed at stabilizing the situation, as well as the procedures for carrying them out in the future.
Syrsky added that the enemy continues to be destroyed both during attempts to move and in identified areas of concentration. In just the past 4 days in the Pokrovsk direction, the total losses of the occupiers amounted to 487 personnel, of which 350 were irrecoverable. In addition, the exchange fund is being replenished with captured Russian soldiers. Earlier, the 7th Air Assault Corps reported on its Telegram channel that in the short term, the enemy aims to reach the settlement of Hryshine, which is northwest of Pokrovsk. It is noted that due to their inability to break through Pokrovsk's defenses and use the city as a springboard to carry out this plan, the Russians are trying to bypass the city. At the same time, the enemy continues its futile attempts to pin down the defense of Mirnorad.
Recently in Mirnorad, Ukrainian soldiers destroyed a group from the Russian Federation's GRU. Such enemy units operate in the second echelon after sabotage groups and oversee the execution of tasks by the first echelon.
Meanwhile, the head of the main intelligence directorate, Kirilo Budanov, explained why a GUR landing operation was needed in Pokrovsk. In an interview with Channel 24, he said that this was the only way to turn around a very difficult situation in the city. Budanov noted that at that time, the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, had already reported to Putin that the city had been taken.
Nothing else would have worked. What we did,
we were able to buy precious time so that the main units of the armed forces could calmly, as much as possible, approach the city to reinforce it.
According to him, after the GUR special forces landed, Russia stopped talking about capturing Pokrovsk. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, as of 8 o'clock in the morning on November 20th, Ukrainian defenders had stopped 55 assault and offensive actions by the aggressor. Over the past day, Russian invaders suffered 890 casualties.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that Ukraine will receive longer-range missiles but declined to provide details about their quantity or delivery timelines. For several months, we have been working intensively with the Ukrainian government on projects that we technically refer to as long-range fire support. The Ukrainian army will be equipped with such weapon systems, he emphasized during the press conference. Merz refused to answer a question about Germany's previous reluctance to supply Ukraine with Taurus long-range cruise missiles. He described this approach as a tactic to increase pressure on the aggressor country, Russia. According to him, Kyiv will continue to receive long-range weapons in the coming weeks and months, up to and including the production of such weapon systems within Ukraine itself. The war has moved onto the territory of the aggressor country. Strikes on energy facilities in Ukraine are now met with reciprocal attacks. Not only drones are being used now, but also long-range missiles such as Flamingo, Neptune, and missiles from partners, in particular the American ATACMS. Most recently, on the night of November 20th, the Ryazan oil refinery and several other facilities in Russia were hit, according to the Ukrainian General Staff. Meanwhile, in Ternopil, people are bringing flowers and candles to the residential building destroyed by a Russian terrorist attack. 26 people died there, including 3 children, and 93 people were injured.
Now, every Russian strike on Ukrainian energy facilities is immediately met with retaliatory attacks. Just in the past 24 hours, oil refineries, an electrical substation, and a railway in Russia have been hit. On the night of November 20th, drones visited the Ryazan oil refinery.
Right before our eyes. Look, there's smoke rising. Look, there's smoke.
Local residents claim that the Ryazan oil refinery has been attacked again. This is at least the 8th attack on the refinery since the beginning of 2025. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed the strike on the refinery in the Ryazan region. According to the agency, this refinery produces an average of 840,000 tons of TS1 aviation kerosene annually. Meanwhile, Russian frontline cities are rapidly plunging into darkness and cold. For example, in Rylsk in the Kursk region, a substation was hit. According to the head of the region, Alexander Kinshtein, as a result of the attack, more than 16,000 people in the Glushkovsky, Rylsky, and Korenevsky districts were left without electricity. Rylsk has already been connected to backup power sources. And these are shots from the Perm region.
These first 2 tanks, they flew off right away. You get it?
The ones in the ditch.
Yeah.
A fire destroyed an entire train of tank cars carrying petroleum products on the railway tracks in the Sverdlovsk region. The cause of the fire is unknown. Representatives of Russian railways stated,
On November 19, 2025, tank cars in a freight train caught fire on the Samara-Kordon section of the Sverdlovsk railway. At present, measures are being taken to eliminate the consequences.
If previously the territory of the Russian Federation was mainly attacked by drones, now Ukraine is using its own long-range missiles, such as the Flamingo and Neptune, as well as missiles from partners, for example, the American ATACMS. Russian military personnel personally witnessed their effectiveness yesterday at their facilities in Voronezh.
The guys are watching us. Here are two. Come on, there was a fifth one over there too.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated on November 18th they successfully used ATACMS tactical missile systems to carry out a precision strike on military targets inside Russia. This is a landmark event that underscores Ukraine's unwavering commitment to its sovereignty, the Ukrainian side said in a statement. The use of long-range strike systems, particularly those like ATAC-EMS, will continue. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the attack and reported that on November 18, 2025, at 14:31 Moscow time, the Ukrainian side used 4 ATAC-EMS operational tactical missiles against the city of Voronezh. In addition, the Russian army reports the alleged destruction of 2 MLRS multiple launch rocket system launchers, which fire ATAC-MS missiles, and publishes photographs of fragments of ballistic missiles aimed at Voronezh. Military expert Yuri Fedorov in one of his interviews says that the potential target of the ATAC-MS strike, which was authorized by the US for the first time, could have been the Baltimore airfield in Voronezh, where the 47th Aviation Regiment of the Russian Aerospace Forces is stationed. Sources from the Ukrainian project Cyberboroshno claim that the missile strike had several targets. One of them is the Pogonovo military training ground, located not far from Voronezh, where at the time of the attack there was a concentration of Russian armed forces personnel. These images of the aftermath of the Russian attack on Ukraine have spread around the world. People are still being searched for under the rubble of a residential high-rise in Ternopil. The whereabouts of more than 20 people remain unknown. As of the time this report was prepared, 26 deaths have been confirmed, including 3 children.
In Russia's Permkrai, an entire train carrying petroleum products and gas condensate was destroyed. According to local social media, the glow could be seen for kilometers, and pro-war channels are already panicking about sabotage. As a result, 9 tank cars in the freight train caught fire. 2 fire trains were dispatched to the scene of the emergency, and traffic on the section was halted. Not an act of sabotage, but state terrorism. That's how Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski classified the incidents that occurred on the Warsaw-Lublin railway line on November 15th and 16th. This line connects the Polish capital with the Ukrainian border, Sikorski stated. Behind what happened is a Russian intelligence agency, the main directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, which conducts operations under a false flag. A foreign state sent well-trained saboteurs who could only by some miracle fail to achieve their goal, the diplomat emphasized. At the same time, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk believes that Russia's use of Ukrainians to carry out acts of sabotage is aimed at fueling anti-Ukrainian sentiment in Poland. Ukraine and Poland have agreed to work together to prevent sabotage on the railway. What is known about this incident? Let's keep watching, and don't forget to like this episode.
Ukraine and Poland have agreed to create a task force to prevent Russian sabotage. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy held talks with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. They discussed the recent acts of sabotage on the Polish railway. The Ukrainian leader noted that Telegram was used to organize subversive activities and launch a disinformation campaign against Ukraine.
Our information matches. All the facts point to a Russian connection behind all of this. No one but the Russians is interested in this. Ukraine is ready to cooperate with Poland at various levels and share all information.
Zelenskyy reported that the Ukrainian company Ukrzaliznytsia has implemented appropriate measures to counter such sabotage. The section of the Warsaw-Lublin railway where the sabotage took place is of strategic importance for assisting Ukraine. This could be one of the routes through which military aid from Western partners is delivered. The incident occurred on November 16th at approximately 7:39 a.m. local time near the village of Zilichi in the Masovian voivodeship. The railway tracks were damaged on this section as a result of the explosion. At the scene, law enforcement officers found a camera as well as a second explosive device that did not detonate. The explosion on the tracks may have been triggered using mobile phones. In Poland, the sabotage on the railway was called an unprecedented act of sabotage, which bears all the hallmarks of a hybrid attack by Russian special services. At the scene, Prime Minister Donald Tusk made a statement.
There is no doubt that we are dealing with an act of sabotage. The explosion was most likely intended to derail a train that runs along a route also used for transporting weapons to Ukraine.
Later, law enforcement officers discovered a Russian connection in the case, leading to Ukraine. And on November 18th, during a speech in the Sejm, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk accused Russia of sabotage.
We are certain, not just assuming, that both incidents were deliberate, had their perpetrators, and their goal was to cause a disaster on the railway. The identified individuals are 2 Ukrainian citizens. They had been cooperating with Russian intelligence services for a long time.
According to the Prime Minister, they entered Poland from Belarus and managed to leave after the sabotage. He stated that Poland will demand that Belarus detain and extradite the suspects. In turn, Jacek Dobrzyński, the spokesperson for the Polish Minister Coordinator of Special Services, stated that the sabotage or terrorist act on Poland's railway tracks was organized by intelligence services from the east. In response to the Russian sabotage, Warsaw announced that it is closing the Russian consulate in Gdansk, the last one in Poland. The Kremlin reacted nervously to this.
Relations with Poland have completely deteriorated, and this is probably a manifestation of that degradation, the Polish authorities' intention to reduce any possibility of consular or diplomatic relations to zero.
The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs also responded to reports about Ukrainians being involved in the incident in Poland. They noted that the source of such sabotage is Russia, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Andriy Sybiha, expressed solidarity with friendly Poland in connection with the incident on the railway. Commenting on the explosion on the Warsaw-Lublin section, Sybiha suggested that this could be yet another hybrid attack by Russia aimed at testing the response.